Welcome to Preeminent Test Prep. Today's day 34 in our 90-day SAT prep series. Today we're going to be spending about 20 to 25 minutes with the SAT math section, and then we'll be spending about 25 to 30 minutes with the SAT writing section. So with this today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going through problems 31 to 38 of the math with calculator section of a 2019 released SAT from the state of Maine. So as I go through, be sure to have a notebook out because I'll be giving you my tips, tricks, advice, and strategies for the SAT math section as someone who's scored 1590 and scored 800 on the math section on back-to-back SATs. So I'll really be trying to give you insight into what I look for to be very, very efficient with the SAT math section and how you can adopt the strategies that I use and the way that I problem solve in order to become more efficient, more accurate, and faster at the SAT math section yourself. So be sure to have a notebook out so you can put things like that down in your notebook. Also, it'd be helpful to have a workbook out in order to work through the problems with you. So after I do the math section today, I'll switch over and do the writing section, which I've also scored perfectly on back-to-back SATs, and I'll be giving you my tips, tricks, advice, strategies, and insights into that section as well. But first, let's go ahead and get started with the SAT math section. Also, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. But let's go ahead and get started. So we got 31 through 38. So we know these are going to be the free response questions. We're not going to have multiple choice options that we can use to get rid of answer choices, find the correct one easily, things like that. We'll have to find them mathematically on our own. Also, another thing to note is that the problems get progressively more difficult from 31 through 38, with 38 being usually the most difficult and 31 usually being the easiest of those 8 free response questions. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We got Anne was 99 centimeters tall the day she turned 3 years old. She was 106.5 centimeters tall the day she turned 4 years old. If Anna's height increases by the same amount each year between the ages of 2 and 8, how many centimeters tall will she be the day she turns 7? Okay, well, we know that she went from 3 years old to 4 years old, and she went from 99 centimeters to 106.5. Okay, so that's an increase then of 106.5 centimeters minus 99, which is 7.5. So she's growing by 7.5 centimeters per year, right? So we'll use X as per year, right? So we know that when she's 3 years old, she's 99 centimeters tall. Okay, we want to know how tall she is when she's 7 years old. 7 years old. Okay, so we have to add 4 years here. So how much is she going to grow in those 4 years between when she is 3 to when she's 7, right? That's an increase of 4 years, so we're going to have to add 4 times however much she grows per year, which we know is 7.5. So that X then is going to be that X is going to be 4, right? That's 4 years times that 7.5 centimeters per year that she grows. Okay, so 99 plus 7.5 times 4, 7.5 times 4 gives us 30. 99 plus 30 then will give us 129. Okay, so that's how tall she's going to be when she is 7 years old. So that one right there is pretty simple. Like I said, the earlier ones in the free response part are going to be pretty simple, so these ones shouldn't be too bad at all. That one right there, pretty much just setting up your equation, solving for it, not too bad at all. So 129 is our answer to 31. All right, now we got 32. We have cars registered in town X. We've got the table above showing a distribution of color for 4,000 cars registered in town X. Based on the table, how many more white cars than black cars are registered in town X? All right, quickest way to do this one. This is a little trick with percentages and the difference between them. What we're going to do is we're going to find how many more white cars there are than black. So we take the percentage for white cars, we see is 32%. We're going to subtract the percentage of black cars. So we're going to have 32% minus 13%. We see that that's going to give us 19%. Okay, as a percentage, we write that as 0.19. Okay, so we take that 19%, then we multiply it by the total number of cars of 4,000. Multiply it by 4,000, right, and that's going to give us 760, right? I'll put that in my calculator real quick to make sure my mental math is correct. Times 4,000, and that is indeed 760, right? So that'll be our answer right here. So 760 is the number of white cars. How many there are more of white cars than black cars, okay? So why did I say the quickest way to do it was to do it like this, right? So you could have multiplied your 4,000 by 0.32, right? 4,000 times 0.32 here, and then subtracted 4,000 times 0.13. But the quickest way to do that is to just go ahead and do that 32% minus 13%, say, okay, I see that that's going to be 0.19, okay, and then I take that 0.19 and multiply it by that 4,000. Right? Because some people can do this 32% minus that 13% in their head and get that 19% and immediately know, okay, 0.19 times 4,000, that gives me my difference. Difference is going to be 760, right? That's going to be a lot quicker than putting this in your calculator, and then subtracting the number of black ones from the number of white ones, right? So quickest way to do it would be to take that 32%, subtract 13%, you get 19%, do 0.19 times 4,000, and that gives you your answer there. So 760, answer for 32. All right, 33. So I've got stacked equations there. Let's see what we're asked. So in the system of equations above, we got a solution x, y. What's the value of x plus y? All right, in this case, since I see I have 2y and 2y, I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of 2y, solve for x, then go back, solve for y, and then add them together, okay? One thing that you want to pay attention to is what you're asked at the end of your question. I've talked about this before, and I'll say it again. Always make sure that you're paying attention to that. In this case, it's x plus y, so we got to solve for both of them. So we subtract, we get rid of y because 2y minus 2y is 0. 3x minus 6x gives me negative 3x. 16 minus 28 is going to give me negative 12. Okay, I divide each side by negative 3. Divide each side by negative 3. That's going to give me 4. Okay, so I know x is 4. So x is 4. Now I plug in 4 here. We'll pick the top one. 3 times 4, that's going to give me 12. 12 plus 2y equals 16. 16 minus 12 then to get rid of it on that side. That's going to give me 4. Now I have 4 equals 2y. 4 equals 2y. Y must be 2 then, right? Because we divide each side by 2. 4 over 2 gives us 2. We know y is 2. Okay, so now we have to add those together. We have 4 plus 2. We know that that's equal to 6 because we need to solve for x plus y. We know x is 4. X is 4. We know y is 2. Therefore, their sum is going to equal that 6 there. So answer for 33 is going to be 6. So once again, I hope you're seeing that these earlier problems in that free response section are not too bad at all. They're really not near as difficult as 24 through 30 are with the multiple choice of the math with calculator. So just understand that it's not too bad at the beginning, okay? And I'll talk more about that when I talk about how we pace and how we strategize for the SAT math section as a result of these earlier problems in the free response one being easier than those ones later in the multiple choice, but that's going to be for another day. All right, so 34, we got monthly enrollments in art classes. So we have Community Center A and B, and then we have a couple months here with data in the chart. So we have the tables showing monthly enrollments in art classes at 2 community centers for 7 consecutive months. Based on the table, by how much does the median monthly enrollment in Community Center B exceed the median monthly enrollment in Community Center A for the 7 months? Okay, the key part here is that we need the median monthly enrollment for A and B, and then we need to find the difference between them. Okay, we have to find how much B exceeds A. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to have to find the median of each one. So I'm going to get rid of my 3 smallest values since I see there are 7 total values. And then I'll get rid of my 3 largest values for Community Center A. So I'll go ahead and do that. And I see that I'm left with 111. Next, I'm going to go to Community Center B, take away my 3 smallest values, which I see are the ones in the 300s. Then I'm going to take away my 3 largest values. Okay, so now I see that I have 407 and 111. So I would do 407 minus 111, and I know that if I plug that in my calculator, or if you could do it in your head, either way, 407 minus 111 is going to give us 296. Okay, now why would we put it in our calculator instead of doing it in our head here? Well, by putting it in our calculator, we're allowed to. It kind of makes sense to do it on the free response question, right? Especially with the free response question, because if you're off by 1 or 2, right, you're not just going to be able to see that in the multiple choice answers. You're really going to end up just putting your answer wrong by 1 or 2. So with the free response section, anytime you're subtracting or multiplying or dividing large numbers like this or adding them and they're 3-digit numbers, it really does make sense to use your calculator, right? Yes, it may take 1 or 2 more seconds possibly, but with the free response section, the thing is if you're off by 1 in your mental math, you're not going to be able to catch yourself with multiple choice answers. So it really does make sense to use your calculator when dealing with large numbers like this on the SAT math with calculator section. All right, sorry about that. I got interrupted. I just finished explaining 34 though, so we can go ahead and move on to 35. Not a big deal. All right, so we got in the right triangle above, we have sine of the angle theta equals 2/5. If a to c equals the square root of n, what is the value of n? All right, well, a to c, we can go ahead and put root n there because that's what it's telling us. We know sine of theta. We know that the sine is equal to the opposite over hypotenuse, right? So our opposite from theta here is going to be b to c over our hypotenuse of 10. Now, we know the sine of theta is 2/5. So if the sine of theta is 2/5 and our hypotenuse is 10, well, that's double what this 5 was here. So we have to double 2. 2 then is going to be 4. So 4 is going to be BC because then we have 4/10 for the sine of theta, which is also equal to 2/5. Okay, so now that we have that, we're asked to solve for the value of n. Well, n is underneath this square root, so we have to solve for that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem, which states that 10 squared, because 10 is our hypotenuse, must equal our 4 squared, because that is our other side length, plus whatever a to c is squared, right, plus ac squared. So now what we can go ahead and do is we can take that, that's going to be 100. We can subtract that 16 because 4 squared is 16, right? We subtract 16 to get rid of it. Subtract 16 from each side. So now we have 100 minus 16. That gives us 84. 84 is equal to AC squared. Okay, so we go ahead and take the root of each side, right? And we see then that side length AC is going to equal the square root of 84. Okay, so what's n then? Well, n must equal that square root of 84, which means n has to equal 84. So answer there is going to be 84. All right, so as far as that one, the big thing there is understanding sine, right? Understanding that's the opposite over the hypotenuse. Other than that, after that, you just had to understand the Pythagorean theorem, which states that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. If you understood that, that problem's really not too difficult at all. So once again, you kind of start to recognize that after going through problems 24 through 30, look for pretty much the last week, you can kind of see that these ones are a bit easier, right, or a lot easier than what those are, which kind of I'll show more about how that affects our strategy and how we pace and things like that in later weeks. But for now, just kind of make a mental note of that. All right, in the xy plane, the graph of y equals x squared plus bx plus c, where b and c are constants, has x-intercepts at x equals -2 and x equals -6. What's the value of b? All right, well, if we have x-intercepts at x equals -2, then that means we have to have x plus 2 as a factor. And if we have an x-intercept at -6, that means we have to have x plus 6 as a factor, right? We just flip the sign, and that gives us our factor. So we're going to have x plus 2 times x plus 6. So what's this b here going to be? Well, we're going to have 2 times x, so we'll have 2x. And then we'll have 6 times x, so plus 6x. And that will give us 8x. We're asked for the value of b. The value of b then will just be 8. Okay, so once again, that one is not too difficult at all. Okay, so that one right there, answer there will be 8. So as far as what we needed to know to understand this, understanding x-intercepts, okay, they're going to be our factors, okay, which means that we just flip the sign and add x, right? So we'll just have x, flip the sign to -2, which means our factor will be x plus 2. Same thing with the x equals -6. So that one right there, not too bad at all. And then we just solve for b, which is 8. All right, down here, we've got a table. We've got a contractor purchasing 2 slabs of granite, both in the shape of a right rectangular prism. If you don't know what a right rectangular prism is, think about a shoebox. A shoebox is a right rectangular prism. All right, the table below shows some information about the 2 slabs. So we got length, width, and thickness, and then mass. Okay, 37. What's the density in grams per cubic centimeter of slab 1? Okay, density, you need to know that that is mass divided by volume. Okay, so if you don't know that, put it in your notes. Mass divided by volume is density. Okay, so if we're going to calculate our mass over our volume, we know our mass is 44,000 grams, so we can go ahead and put that on top, 44,000 grams. Now what's our volume? Well, our volume for a right rectangular prism is our length times width times our thickness, right? So times thickness. So let's go ahead and do that. That gives us our volume. So we know in this case our volume then is going to be that 100 centimeters times 20 centimeters times 8 centimeters. If we plug that into our calculator or do it mentally, we see that that is going to give us 16,000. So 16,000 is going to be our volume then. So 16,000. So at this point, we know that that's in cubic centimeters as well, right? Grams per cubic centimeter. So then at this point, we go ahead and divide that. We can plug it into our calculator or we can do it mentally, whatever you want. So I'll just plug it into the calculator and you see that the correct answer there is going to be 2.75. So that's what I would plug into my bubble sheet if I were filling this out, right? It'd be 2.75 would be my answer there. All right, so just another recommendation here. You know how I said that you could do it mentally or you could plug it into your calculator? Once again, I would just recommend plugging it into your calculator here, right? There's no reason to take a chance on making a mental error with the free response section because you're not going to be able to catch it. Okay, it's unlikely you'd be able to catch a mental error because you're filling it in and there's no answer choice to keep you honest, right? There's no A, B, and C from which you can see, oh, I don't match any of these. I must have made a stupid mental error, okay? So on the calculator section, if you're allowed to use it, right, which in the math with calculator section you are, in a situation like this, just go ahead and use it. It's not worth the risk of making a mental error. So just go ahead and use it, especially because doing 44 over 16, since you can cancel these 3 zeros, right, that's only going to take you like a second to do on your calculator. And I think it's worth it for that extra security of having put it in a calculator and knowing that answer is for sure right. So that's just one thing. That's what I would do. I'd make sure that with the free response section of the math with calculator, I would definitely make sure that I do use my calculator if I'm dealing with large numbers like that, just to make sure that I have that extra security, especially because it comes at very, very little cost. Plugging in 44 over 16 in your calculator will only take like a second or two. So if it's something like that, I mean, I think it's just worth it for the extra security of having a computer do the math rather than your mind. But your call on that. So we got slab 2 has a ratio of length to width of 5 over 2. So I'm going to put that over here. Length to width is 5 over 2. How many centimeters wide is slab 2? So we need to calculate the width of slab 2. Well, I see my length is 125. Okay, so I'll go down here. I see that my length is 125. I want to calculate my width. Okay, if I want to solve for width, what I want to do actually is I want to flip this, right? I want to do width over length equals 2 over 5. Why do I want to do that? Well, also I just found that my length was 125, so I'll go ahead and put that right here. Okay. So why do I want to flip it and have my width up top, right, when I write the ratio? Well, since I want to solve for my width, whatever variable I want to solve for in my ratio problem, I want to put it up top, because then I can just multiply by 125. I have 2 times 125 over 5. I go ahead and plug that in my calculator. That's going to give me 250 over 5, which is going to be 50. Okay. So the reason that I do it like this is because by putting my variable I want to solve for up top, it saves me steps. And I'm going to show you why here real quick. And I've talked about this before, so if you already know, you can just watch again. I'll try to make it a little bit quicker. So we put it up top because if we were to put it on bottom, we have to multiply by our width, then we got to multiply by 2, then we got to multiply by 2, then we got to divide by 5, then we got to divide by 5, and then we got to substitute L in, and then finally we solve for width. See how many more steps that is? It's not worth taking all that extra time. It's much, much faster just to flip it and put W up top, since that's what we got to solve for. So that's my recommendation to you. Put that in your notes is what I would do if I were you, because that's really going to save you a lot of time. But yeah, 50 is going to be our answer for 38. So hopefully that really shows you that these free response sections, they're not actually too difficult mathematically. And if you really look at it, they do get progressively more difficult as you go from 31 to 38. But overall, if you look at 31 to 36, they're actually, in my opinion, easier than what 24 through 30 are of the multiple choice part, right? Part of that is because they obviously, with the free response section, like 31 through 33, they're going to be real easy because they're at the start of it. But also, because it's free response, they're not going to make it super complex, right? Like they do with 24 through 30. And even 24 through 30 aren't even terribly complex, but they're definitely more complex than 31 to 36 are. So I'll talk more about how that influences our strategy, how we pace, and things like that in a later week. But for now, just pointing that out to you. Just kind of help you start making connections there. So now let's go ahead and switch over to our other section for today. All right, let's get started with the writing section for today. So today we'll be going through SAT Practice Test 5. We'll be doing 2 passages today, so that'll be questions 23 through 44. So what I'll be doing as I go through is I'll be giving my tips, tricks, advice, strategies, and all of that for the SAT writing section. Really trying to break down how you can get to the right answer, why correct answers are correct, why incorrect answers are incorrect, and trying to give you a great sense of how you can find that right answer the easiest, okay? So a lot of this with the SAT writing section is making sure you understand grammar rules, and then once you understand that, you really start to see patterns emerge across practice tests, and that really makes taking the test a lot easier because it's very easy to identify what you're being asked to, or what you're being quizzed on essentially, right? What you're being asked to fix in the sentence or in the passage as a whole. So that makes it much easier. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we got rethinking crowdfunding in the arts. Crowdfunding is a popular way to raise money using the internet. This process sounds simple. An artist, entrepreneur, or other innovator takes his or her ideas straight to the public via a crowdfunding website. The innovator creates a video about the project and offers in exchange for donations a series of perks, from acknowledgement on a social media site to a small piece of art. Many crowdfunding programs are all or nothing. In other words, the innovator must garner 100% funding for the project, or the money is refunded to donors. At its best, okay, I know this is the wrong its, okay, this is a homophone question, right here at its best, the correct its is its with no apostrophe, okay? With the apostrophe, it would be it is. We want the singular possessive, which is just its with no apostrophe. Okay, so this is testing us on our homophones, okay? We want the correct answer there is going to be B. That's testing us on homophones. So 23, correct answer there is going to be B. That's really testing us on homophones. Now we got next part. The system can give creators direct access to millions of potential backers. The home page of one leading crowdfunding site features a project to manufacture pinhole cameras on 3D printer. Okay, I'm asked to combine these two sentences. So what's going to effectively do that? Let's take a look at what our sentences are. The idea is obviously very attractive. An obscure method of photography may be made available at little expense. Okay, we see that that's really the correct order of ideas. We have our claim, and then we support it with evidence, right? Evidence being that it's very little expense, it's very cheap. That obscure method of photography is. So we're going to try to find something that maintains that order but combines them. So we're going to want to start with the idea being attractive. We see that we have that in option B. And then we want to talk about it being an obscure method of photography that's made available at very, very little expense. Okay, this works perfectly because we use a colon to illustrate our claim in our first independent clause. We have an independent clause here. We illustrate why that is true with another independent clause. An obscure method of photography may be made available with another independent clause after that colon. So we're using two independent clauses, connecting them with a colon because that second one illustrates the idea in the first. So B is absolutely perfect. B will be our correct answer there. As far as why A, C, and D are wrong, let's go ahead and cover that. So A, with the idea being obviously very attractive, that's a weird way to start a sentence, first of all, so we wouldn't want to do it that way. An obscure method may be made available at very little expense. Okay, this is really bad. This is not what we want to start a sentence with. With the idea being obviously very attractive, okay, that's really a wordy way to start it. It's wordy. We don't want to be wordy when we're doing this, so that's wrong. C, an obscure method of photography. Once again, that one is out of order because we wanted to start with the idea being attractive because that's our claim. So C is wrong. Same with D, also out of order. All right, 25. So we have the project was 621% funded. In contrast, on the same page, a small Brooklyn performance venue is attempting to raise money for its current season. The venue features works of performance art showcased in a storefront window. Those who have seen the space consider it vital. Then we have a word underlined and then a comma at the beginning of my sentence, so I know I'm looking to transition or connect or link these two sentences, the one that comes before it to the one that it's on. So that group may not be large enough with just 14 days to go in the fundraising period. The campaign is only 46% funded. Okay, so this is really showing us that those who have seen it consider it vital or consider it important or worth money. Now we want to say that it's not getting that money, right? That's not enough people. So a great way to do that is however, because it's showing that contrast. So correct answer for 25 there is going to be A because it shows contrast using the word however. We wouldn't say therefore because therefore would indicate a causal relationship and there is no causal relationship there. We wouldn't say in effect either. Once again, that would be causal. D as a rule, this is not as a rule either, so D is incorrect. So 25 will be A. And with that, we can go ahead and move on to 26. So we have artists such as these Brooklyn performers find that crowdfunding exacerbates problems that already exist. Okay, next up I've got work and then a comma. That's really a weird way to start the sentence, and that's not going to be how we're going to want to start it. Okay, so we can get rid of no change. We wouldn't want to start by saying work and then putting a comma after that. That's a bad way to start a sentence. We have work that is easily understood and appreciated is supported. Okay, there cannot be a comma here. Okay, it has to be work that is easily understood and appreciated because that's one what we call a noun phrase. That's one noun phrase. Okay, that is easily understood and appreciated right here. That's describing what kind of work it is, and that has to be connected with no punctuation. So it has to be all treated as one noun phrase. Is supported. Okay, so we can't have a comma here either. So no comma where I'm putting this X. We can't have one there either. Okay, is supported while more complex work goes unnoticed. Okay, we also can't have a comma here because this is a list of two. So C is going to be wrong. As far as D, like I said, we can't split work from that, so that's going to be wrong as well. So 26, our answer there is going to have to be B. Okay, work that is easily and understood is supported, while the more complex work goes unnoticed. B would be our correct answer there. We can't just put commas wherever we want, and we can't split up work in that. Okay, can't split up work in that, so that took away A and B. And then we also can't have a comma if we have a list of two. If it's a list of two, we don't have a comma before that and. All right, 27. At this point, the writer is considering adding a following sentence. Anytime we're asked to add a sentence, whether we should or not, we want to read the sentence before it and the sentence after. So we just read the sentence before, I'll read the sentence after it. Time that could be used creating art is spent devising clever perks to draw attention of potential contributors. This is showing a drawback of that crowdfunding approach. So let's read what this says. Crowdfunding tends to attract contributors from a wide variety of professional fields. All right, this is largely unrelated. Okay, it's blurring our focus. So it's really blurring the focus of our paragraph by introducing a poorly integrated piece of information. Like I said, it's unrelated to the fact that the donors come from a wide variety of professional fields, because at this point, we're really talking more about the people who are making the art than the donors themselves. So this would be a bad spot to put that in. So we're going to not add it for sure. Okay, and our answer here is going to be D for number 27. As far as why it wouldn't be C, C says no because it fails to take into account project funding from public institutions. We're not talking about that at all, and neither is this really. So C is way off base. No, hang on a minute. So no, because it fails to take into account project funding received from public institutions. No, that's not why we don't want to add it. We don't want to add it because it's blurring our focus, okay? So that's really as simple as it gets. If it's blurring our focus, then that's going to be a reason why we don't want to add it. And in this case, it's blurring our focus. So that one's pretty simple. Next after that, I see I have a word beginning of a sentence with a comma after it, which means I'm trying to link that previous sentence to that sentence. So we just read our previous sentence being clever perks to draw attention to potential contributors. Now we're told audiences may contain free riders who don't make contributions. Man. All right, so what's that transition word going to be, right? Well, we just talked about a drawback being that these artists are focused more on providing these perks rather than their art. So that's a drawback. Now we're providing another drawback in addition to that drawback. So 28, our answer should be no change, okay, because we're adding on to that drawback list. So answer for 28 would be no change, okay? We're adding on to our list of drawbacks to this crowdfunding approach. So 28, our answer there is going to have to be A. 29, I kind of said this as I went through it, and that's something that you should do as well. As you read through an SAT writing section, if you say something different, right, and you just say it automatically because you know that's what it needs to be, just go ahead and do that. Don't read it incorrectly because there's no need to if you know what it should be. So if you heard me say this, I said audiences may contain many free riders who did not make contributions, right? Who did not make contribution. We would have a comma here, and we would say who did not make contributions because that's describing who the free riders are. Okay, so correct answer there is going to be answer choice C, free riders who did not make contributions. Okay, anytime that we have a subject right here and then we have a comma and we're describing who that subject is, we use a comma, we say who, and then in this case it's who did not make contributions. So we always have the comma there, and we always have a who after. All right, so 29 answer there is going to be C. All right, that takes us through that part. Now we got question 30. Ironically, the success of crowdfunding may weaken overall funding for the arts if people begin to feel that paying for the art they love is someone else's responsibility. Okay, it's the art that they love, not the art that is loved by them. That's wordy. Okay, that is wordy. We don't want to be wordy. We want to be concise. Concise would be the art they love. Wordy would be the art loved by them. And then also wordy, loved by him or her. Also wordy, he or she loves. Okay, we're talking about plural people. Okay, plural people right here. We want to use that plural they, and it's a they love. That's the most concise and efficient word choice that also maintains that plural people. So answer for 30 there is going to be B. All right, question 31. All right, I see I have a 1 here, so as always, whenever I have a 1, I'm going to go find what sentence I got to place. I see it's sentence 2. Though the price for her tickets was higher than that of tickets for comparable shows, it was still affordable to most theatergoers and reflected the real cost of her performance. Okay, so afterwards I want to talk about the real cost of her performance because that's what's being reflected. Real cost of, I'm going to put a P for performance because I don't want to write it all out. What's coming before? The price of her tickets being high. That's what needs to come before. So I'm going to write $ tickets for price of tickets being high, and I'll put an up arrow for high. Okay, so that's what I want to see come before and what comes after. So as I read through, I skip sentence 2 and I just keep reading. So one innovative playwright has woven deficiencies of the system into her crowdfunding model. She presented the total cost for producing her play on a crowdfunding site. Then she divided the total cost by the number of people she expected to attend the performance. The result of the calculation was the minimum donor price, and only donors who paid the minimum ticket price were allowed to attend the performance. Okay, right there, that's our ticket price. In sentence 5, we know what came before it. Our sentence 2, we wanted that to be that high ticket price, so we know we're going to want to place it D after sentence 5 for 32. Okay, we want to place it after the discussion of that ticket price. All right, so you see really how that helps us whenever we can go ahead and read sentence 2, figure out what comes before it. It's going to make it easier to place, and it makes it so we don't have to read this whole big old paragraph twice. Look at how big that is. That is a long paragraph. We don't want to read that twice. We want to read it once. So that's why we use that strategy, because otherwise we're wasting time. And time is not our friend with the SAT. All right. 31. Where's 31? So we've got 31's way down here. By subverting the presumption that money used for her project is an altruistic donation, the playwright showed that her work has monetary value. How do I know it has to be her? Well, right here I have her project. I have to match that then with her work. Okay, so the answer there is going to be her. That one we really want to use context clues, like you saw her project. We want it to match her work. So if you use context clues there, you can find the obvious pronoun has to be her. So that one's basically a pronoun question. We already answered 32, so now we are on to our question 33, I guess, about the graphic. So we've got what's offering an accurate interpretation of the data in the graphs. For questions like this, you really just got to go A through D until you find one that's correct, accurate, according to the graph. So option A, the category with the lowest amount of money raised was also the most successfully funded. All right, so lowest amount of money raised, we see money raised is over here. We see that's dance. Is that also the most successfully funded? We see that it is. Okay, so that is correct. So A will be our answer there. And just one tip that I have is if you're ever in a situation where you have to go A through D like this, there's no other way, such as in a question like this where you're told that you have to find the choice that offers an accurate interpretation of the data in the graphs, I recommend going A through D because here's why. And I don't have data to back this. This is just my experience and my opinion. Okay, so don't take this as fact necessarily, but this is what I would recommend doing. If you're in a situation where you have to go A through D to find the right answer like this, start with A and go down. And here's why. The SAT and College Board, they understand this is timed. So if they put it at D, they understand that's going to be the last one you get to, and you're going to have to go through all that time. So in my opinion, I think they are generally going to be more likely to put it closer to the top in A, B, or C because they understand that that's going to make you take less time to find it. And I think they understand that since it's a time test, they don't want you to be wasting time reading incorrect answer choices. Now keep in mind that's just an opinion. That's nothing that has been confirmed by College Board or anything. That's just something I recommend doing. That's what I do with the SAT. If I'm ever in a situation where I have to just go through A through D to find my right answer, I'm going to start with A, okay? Because if I find the correct answer choice is B, I'm not going to read C and D. If I find the correct answer choice is A, I'm not going to read B, C, or D. Okay, so in those situations, I always go A through D. So that's just a word of wisdom, in my opinion. As always, that is just my opinion, though. So I would recommend doing that, but you can do as you wish. All right, so investigative journalism and involving American tradition. I see I got a 1 here. I'm going to find my sentence question. I see it's right here. For the sake and logic of cohesion of the paragraph, sentence 3 should be placed where? I see sentence 3 is here. Newspapers, the traditional nurturing ground for investigative journalism, have been hit especially hard by the widespread availability of news online. All right, so I want to talk about news online then, either before or after it. Right here, it's hard to tell whether they want me to say it before or after. I would say probably before. Yeah, I would probably say before. I want to be talking about news online. Yeah, so that's really what I got there. So news online, I'd say, should probably come before in this case. This one's going to be kind of one that we're going to have to place. And this one, it's not a big paragraph, so it shouldn't be too tough to place without spending any more time if we do have to reread. So the recent precipitous decline of print journalism as a viable profession has exacerbated long-held concerns about the state of investigative reporting in the United States. Facing lower print circulation and diminished advertising revenue, many major newspapers have reduced or eliminated investigative resources. Newspapers, the traditional nurturing ground for investigative journalism, have been hit especially hard by the widespread availability of news online. To survive, investigative journalism must continue to adapt in the digital age. All right, so this one, what we're really going to want to do here is we're going to want to place this one right after we talk about those concerns about investigative reporting, right? I talked about how we got news online and that could come before it, but we also talked about, when I said that, I kind of talked about how I wasn't totally sure, right? This one was kind of a tough one to place because we start with the word newspapers, and then we talk about the traditional nurturing ground for investigative journalism. So what I should have said is I should have said that we're going to look to talk about investigative journalism before this, right? Because that's what came here. So that's my error. I should have seen that earlier. I see it now after I struggled to place it. So that can kind of show you, learn from my mistake there, okay? I focused too much on this last part. Okay, and when I focused too much on that last part, I missed what should come before it. So learn from my mistake right there, as I did. I need to focus more on that whole thing, right? So what starts this sentence out right here, I want to focus on that coming before it. So that's going to be investigative journalism. And then what comes after, we're going to want that to be the things about being hard hit by this free news online, so a decrease in print of the newspapers. So I see that if I'm looking at that, I see I have investigative reporting right here. We're talking about concerns about the state of it. We're talking about how the traditional nurturing ground for it has been hit hard. So I'm going to want to place that after sentence 1. So answer there is going to be C. Okay. So learn from my mistake there, as I did. But yeah, don't be scared either. If you make a mistake like that, don't panic. Notice how I stayed calm, just looked back to the text, looked for my answer within the text, right? Reread my sentence, zoomed out. That's another thing. If you're struggling to find your correct answer choice, right, you feel like you're stuck, just zoom out, reread, and just stay calm. Staying calm is very important. All right, so we got 34 out the way. 34 is going to be C. Now we got 35. So it's not difficult to understand why a cash-strapped, understaffed publication might feel pressure to cut teams of investigative reporters. Okay, reporters doesn't own anything here, so there's not going to be an apostrophe there. So I can go ahead and get rid of A and I can get rid of D. Okay, next thing, am I going to have a comma or a colon after that? Well, I know what came before it is an independent clause, and I know what comes after it, their work is expensive and time-consuming, is also an independent clause, which means I can't connect them with only a comma. I would have to have a fanboy, and I don't, which means answer choice has to be B for 35. All right, question 36. We've got taking on the public interest? No, okay. Investigative journalism, right here, which is what is being modified by this introductory modifying phrase, is undertaken in the public interest. It's not taken on the public interest. Taking on the public interest would be going against it. Undertaken in the public interest is advocating that public interest. Overtaking the public interest would be overtaking it, and it's not doing that. And it's not taking off from it either. Okay, it's undertaken in the public interest. It's working for the public interest. So B is our correct answer for 36. Okay, that one is really just understanding the definition of the word undertaken. That's really what that one, that's pretty much all that is. So we're really understanding that investigative journalists, they are undertaken in that public interest. Okay, it often involves long-form reporting on such topics as illegal activities, street crime, corporate wrongdoing, and political corruption. Those are all examples of illegal activities. So same with business scandals. Those are all examples. Business scandals is corporate wrongdoing. Abuse of government power is political corruption. So all of these would be redundant because all of them are stated in these other three examples. So we just want to delete that underlined portion there. Okay, because if you watch my writing and language videos where I go through those 10 practice tests and give answer explanations, you'll hear me say a lot, avoid repetition and redundancy at all costs. I say that all the time when I do those, and I totally misspelled repetition, so I'm not even going to bother rewriting it, but I say avoid repetition and redundancy at all costs, and that's really, really big advice for the SAT writing section. You see it right there. Getting rid of that avoids that redundancy and repetition. All right, so an investigative story involves one or more experienced journalists dedicating their full energy and resources of the publisher to a piece for a prolonged period of time. Expensive legal battles may ensue. The results of this work, though costly, have helped to keep those in power accountable. The exposure by the Washington Post reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein of government misconduct in the Watergate scandal and the resignation of President Nixon in 1974. More recently, in 2004, someone reported helping publicize mistreatment of Iraqi prisoners by U.S. personnel at Abu Ghraib during the Iraq War. In these and other cases, exposure from reporters has acted as an important blockade to or scolding of malfeasance. We wouldn't say it acts as a blockade, okay, because those things still occur. We wouldn't say it acts as a interference to, because once again, those things do still occur. Drag on, that's to slang. We wouldn't use slang. Deterrent or rebuke to, yes, right? We have people who would worry that these investigative journalists would catch them in their act, right? They think that they would get caught or rebuked to, which is similar to condemnation, but the real problem with B was the interference to, okay? So answer choice D is correct for 39. I realize that I skipped over 38. I'll go back here. So 38, we see that we're asked if we should add this. Now what jumps out to me immediately is I said Nixon in 1974, New Yorker in 2004. So I'm moving chronologically, but if I'm to add this, then I reverse that chronological order, which I don't really want to do. Okay, so no, I don't want to add it. As far as why, it's not just that it reverses the chronological order. It's also that it's kind of substance, right? So here we're really talking about print media, and we'd be switching over into a television show. So it's also, as far as the substance of that sentence, is also out of place. So correct answer there is going to be C for 38, right? That substance is out of place, and chronologically it'd be out of place. As far as why D is incorrect, no, because it provides an example that's inconsistent with the passage's definition of investigative journalism. We describe investigative journalism as being broadcast television as well. So D is incorrect. So we got C, and then we have D for 39. All right, now we've got question 40. So 40 is on our next page. Scroll down here. While worrisome, the decline of traditional print media, now I'm told which choice most effectively suggests the end of investigative journalism is a real possibility, but one that can be prevented. Key part here is one that can be prevented. Okay, if we were to say the decline of traditional print media could not entail the end of investigative journalism, that's not really showing that it's one that can be prevented. It's saying it's possible, it's not, but it's not saying we can do anything about it, right? Now, in contrast, option B, saying it need not entail the end of investigative journalism, is showing we can actually do something about it. So that's showing it can be prevented. So that's the key part as to why B is correct for 40. As far as C and D, as far as why they are incorrect, if we were to say it will not entail the end, well, we actually don't know if it is going to entail the end or not, so we can't say it will not entail the end. Must not entail the end, once again, we don't know for sure. Also, if we were to say it must not entail the end, that's just too strong of a verb, okay, because we don't know, so that's just too strong of a verb there. All right, 41, which choice most effectively sets up the examples in the following sentences? We need to know those examples first, so we're going to jump down here. We have nonprofit enterprises, and then I'm going to go ahead and answer 42 as well. Anytime you skip down to the next question because you need to in order to gather context, go ahead and answer those questions because otherwise you're reading them twice, which is not a good strategy. So you'll notice anytime I'm skipping down because I need more context before I can answer a previous question, I go ahead and I answer those questions as I go through them because that's the most efficient way to do it. So here we have nonprofit enterprises such as the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. All right, right here, that's perfect. We don't want to split this up at all. Anytime we have the word such as like this, and we only have one like this, we're not going to want to split it up. So if we have nonprofit enterprises such as the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project have begun to fill the void created by staff losses. Here's how I know there needs to be no comma right here. Okay, I know there shouldn't be a comma there because if there was, I'd have to have one here. And here's why. If there was a comma here, it would be because this is going to be non-essential, right? The such as the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project would be non-essential because then we would have nonprofit enterprises have begun to fill the void created by staff losses at newspapers and magazines. Okay, that's a full sentence on its own and it makes perfect sense. So if I had a comma right here, then I would look to put a comma right here. But since there is no comma right here, I know I can't have one up here. So that's how I know there should be no comma after enterprises there or a comma after such as. Okay, so my correct answer there is going to be, hang on a minute, let me scroll back up. What was no change? Okay, no change is correct there. Yep. So 42, answer there is going to be A. All right, as far as 41, so at this point, can we go back? Let's go ahead and get a little bit more examples first. So enterprising freelance reporters newly funded by nonprofits make extensive use of social media, including blogs and Twitters to foster a public conversation about key issues. The Help Me Investigate project, for example, right there, that's perfect. We're just providing another example of one of those digital nonprofits that are doing those investigative journalism. So that's just another example. That's a perfect transition there. It's therefore is incorrect because that's a causal relationship word. However, as contrast, we're not contrasted. And in any case, is not even relevant here. So that's going to be way off. Answer 43 is going to be A. Solicited readers to submit tips and information related to ongoing stories to its website. All right, at this point, we've seen the trend in what we're talking about for those examples. They're all nonprofits that do investigative journalism work through digital means. So we're going to look for an answer choice that really encompasses all of that. So let's take a look at our options here. We've got option A, although many newsrooms have reduced their staff, some still employ investigative reporters. That's not what we're talking about. B, investigative journalism declined in the 1930s and 50s, not what we're talking about. C, according to the Pew Research Center, more people get their national and international news from the internet than papers, not what we're talking about. D, indeed, recent years have witnessed innovative adjustments to changing times. Yes. Okay, we're talking about innovative adjustments, those being those nonprofit organizations that do investigative reporting. That's the innovative adjustments we're talking about. So D is correct for 41. All right, I believe we're on 43, 44. Okay, so we're down here. All right, so far from marking the end of investigative journalism, that's an introductory modifying clause. Okay, so what is it modifying? Well, far from marking the end of investigative journalism, what was marking that end of investigative journalism? Well, that would be the digital age, right? The digital age or the invention of the internet. I need something that talks about that. Okay, it can't be cooperation among journalists. Okay, we have to modify the digital age somehow. B, the number of potential investigators. No, once again, we're not modifying that. The advent of the digital age. Yes, that's what we're modifying by saying far from marking the end of investigative journalism. The advent of the digital age was what was going to mark that end. Okay, so C is correct for 44. That is most definitely a modifier question. Notice how much time you saved if you recognize that that's a modifier question because you don't have to read this long part here, this long part here, or this long part in D. Now, keep in mind, you would still have to read D, okay, because you have to understand if this modifier also worked, which in this case it doesn't, but if it did, you would have to read the rest of this and the rest of C to see which one was correct, okay? So understand that. Now, we know that this doesn't have a correct modifier because it says by facilitating cooperation among journalists and ordinary citizens, and that's not what the introductory modifying clause was modifying, so we don't actually have to read the rest of this, you know, but that's just something to pay attention to, that if you have one modifier that works, just make sure you read through the rest, because if there's another one that works, then you have to actually read the rest of the sentence. So just pay attention to that. All right, so with that, thank you for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. If this was helpful, there'll be a donation link in the description when it's up and running. As always, any SAT private tutoring I'm doing will be linked in the description. Any private college admissions consulting I'm doing will be linked in the description. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and have a great day.